Can you beat Minecraft using only a mouse? After beating the game with every block looking the same, it's time we trade in our keyboard for some textures, and try and beat this game without our regular controls. Now for this run, the rules are clean and simple. For this whole challenge, we're only allowed to control Steve with a mouse. That's it. Adding on to that, I also wanted to be kind of a minimalist for the run through. So for this time, all we can do is crouch, walk forward, jump, use our inventory, and obviously left and right click. So with all the rules set in place and our mouse settings ready to go, we can get into it. Let's boot up a random world, disconnect the keys, and plug in the cursor for this no keyboard challenge. Hey there folks, I'm Skip the Tutorial, and here we get to the bottom of gaming's weirdest challenges. And hey, if this is your first time here, then move your mouse over to that subscribe for weekly deep dives into your biggest questions. Now, since the last time I played survival was in a big blank world, it was immediately apparent that there was going to be some changes between the two runs. And while certain aspects do get a whole lot easier, like being able to mine when you actually know what you're looking at, others get way tougher without our traditional control scheme. So for that matter, here are the 7 biggest problems that we'll have to overcome to get to that dragon egg. Rank from surprisingly simple to confusingly complex. Number 1, mining resources. So this is a bit of an interesting obstacle, because much like the no texture run, we get an issue when trying to strip mine for materials. Although, for a different reason. This go around, our issue is based entirely on not being able to look at our F3 screen, which makes finding coordinate levels really a hassle, and essentially negates the time that we'd save by strip mining in the first place. So we've gotta look elsewhere for our ores. And frankly, I was just about ready to follow what we did in the last challenge and start searching for buried treasure under the sea. But even that's a pain. Since we can't turn in our boat, we're stuck going straight forward. And that again rules this method out as an effective solution. So what's the best way about this? Well, it looks like we have to stick to just plain cave exploring, because there's not much else we can do with our limited controls. And sure, this is slow going, and arguably, we can skip out on plenty of the items here if we were doing a true speedrun. But believe me, we'll be dealing with plenty of other issues for the run. So it's worth the time investment to stock up. And after mining our fair share of iron and diamonds for the run, we're good to go, and we can collect our obsidian and head straight to number 2, the Nether. With our tools in place, we should be plenty ready to head into the next dimension. And sure enough, out the gate, we actually catch a bit of a lucky break, since when we spawn in, we've got a Nether fortress right next door. And of all the times I've played this game, I've never loaded this close to the structure, so the burst of luck kinda caught me off guard. But while it's easy to be excited by our own good fortune, what lies inside ends up being way more of an issue. For one, just trying to locate a spawner sucked up plenty of my runtime, with various branching paths that I had to block off with cobblestone just to keep from getting lost. And after all that searching, the blazes were just off to the right. All we had to do was hop the wall. But even after sinking a laughable amount of time trying to find them, fighting the blazes themselves is not exactly a cakewalk. Especially when packs of the things just keep spawning in left and right. And when we're using just a mouse, it gets pretty tough to avoid the onslaught of fireballs. If I didn't pack enough food here, I'd have died several times over. So really, the best case here might just be to wall the monsters in, and then, when possible, sneak inside to land the extra hits. I can't say it'll be over quickly, but we can snag the blaze dust necessary and get us one step closer to the dragon. Number 3, the combat. So even though the blazes can put up a fight, they're nothing compared to what waits for us on the other end of the overworld. Because if we ever catch ourselves squaring off against other mobs, it's plain to see that our controls just aren't cut out for battle. And the main pain point here has to be dodging attacks. Now, I'm not a big fan of dodging, and hell, I've made videos trying to avoid it. But this really ends up being a case of you never know a good thing till it's gone. Because when you have to do a full 180-degree turn just to run away from baddies, it's really gonna make us miss those strafe keys. And while certain enemies, like zombies, can be swept out if we just charge and attack, we've got a real issue when we hear that sound. Because taking on creepers with our limitations gets readily annoying when it takes us so much longer to escape. If we're not pitch perfect with how we take them on, we can easily be looking at an explosion and a respawn. And sure, they're not as common as zombies and skeletons, who we can deal with just fine. But whenever I caught one of these guys out of the corner of my eye, my nerves went right on edge. And honestly, the best tactic here is just to avoid them. It's not worth the risk. Number 4, Ender Pearls. So, with combat as a big trouble, this Ender Pearl hunt gets significantly tougher than what it would be in a regular run. While luckily there was a big desert nearby to go and find the things, we've still got to kill an obscene amount of the creeps. And that lands us our second biggest time sink of the run. Now, admittedly, this hunt ended up being easier than the last challenge, but that doesn't mean there wasn't plenty of room for improvement. While I would have loved to just camp under a short roof and just let the Enderman come and bait towards me, the spawn rates did not allow for that. So, best case solution for this one just winds up being looping around the same biome until eventually something works out. And I'll say, the absolute godsend for our keyless challenge has to be finding a horse and riding through. Now with some proper speed, our issues with the combat can nearly disappear, and then it's just a matter of spending a couple nights on the sand killing off the Enderman. And since I couldn't for the life of me get a looting enchantment for the hunt, I had to get rid of plenty of the suckers before we had enough for the portal. But after matching our total to the blaze powder we stocked up earlier, we've got all that we need to locate the dragon. And quite honestly, that might have been the part of the run I was dreading the most, because the biggest overarching problem for the challenge is number 5, getting lost. Alright, so I had to mention this just for how many different times in my playthrough I'd wind up in the middle of nowhere with little an idea on how to get back to base. Because, as we talked about before, we can't just pull up the F3 debug screen, and that means coordinates are completely out of the picture. And that really left its toll on me for this challenge. On one cow hunt in particular, I got sidetracked on the way out of my base so badly, I was running hundreds of blocks away with no clue on how to get back. And that very well could have meant losing hours of progress on the run, but thank goodness for the Village and Pillage update. Without even thinking about it, I had stumbled upon a savannah village fairly close to my base. And while I was there, I triggered a map just for the hell of it. But that one mindless decision led to our way back on track. Because maps give us a way to position ourselves back to the location, even when we're not nearby. So I will wholeheartedly vouch for picking up a couple of map copies this run, and make sure to stash one every time you go out exploring. Because these items, which I frankly never used before, wound up saving so much of our progress, and got us right back on track for fighting out the dragon. Number 6, the Stronghold. So, after losing hours of my time wandering about the various biomes, I was a little tense to start looking for the Stronghold. But with a map of our base and a blank one ready for the portal location, we were ready to go, which meant chucking out the first Ender Pearl and heading off where it led. But just after I tossed my second one, I got more than a bit confused. Just like that, it had flown right past me and back in the direction that we started. So, retracing my steps, I went to go check it out, and sure enough, the Stronghold wound up being smack dab in the center of the forest, just a few chunks away from my base. Honestly, I'm still dumbfounded that not only was it this close, but also for the fact that I never ran into it while mining. Although I guess it had gone a different way if I could strip mine. But regardless, we dive into the ruins and set out looking for the portal, which was easy enough to find itself, only taking us a couple of turns and twists into the maze to scope out. But hey, after all those times getting lost in the run earlier on, I'm more than happy to have an easy find this late into the challenge. With that, we can lay out some chests full of fighting gear, fuel up the portal, and we have all that we need to dive in, which means that it's time for number 7, the end. Now, I guess unsurprisingly, this ended up being the most draining part of the run, because while we are overstocked on the tools for the case, the execution is where this can all go south. So with that in mind, I left some of my best gear behind in the stash for the first jump in, since losing all that out the get-go would have been too much of a hit for my self-esteem. Packing some adequate tools for the job, we can get to work on taking down the end towers. And since my personal run didn't leave me swimming in arrows, I instead brought along several stacks of snowballs to extinguish the egg crystals, which went fine. Honestly, if I was a better shot with them, it could have gone a lot quicker. But my hand was starting to cramp up by this point, and we're better off just pillaring up to take off the rest of her healing. And sure, that still led to plenty of deaths on my part, there's no doubt about that, from both poor reaction time and getting overly cocky. But as soon as each of them went down, it was time to face off against the dragon herself. And with ranged attacks out the window, thank goodness the dragon takes some time to land every now and then. Still using our less than optimal toolset, we start laying on some damage to her tail. Although, dealing with angry endermen and getting sprayed down by her dragon magic ended up making this more of a problem than I was looking for. And more so than that, it ended up being a pretty big problem for my PC, which was not having an easy go of running 1.14 and recording at the same time. The reason? I still don't know, but I figured maybe a relog would fix out the issue. That ended up being the worst decision I've made this entire run, because when we logged back in, the dragon had all of her health back, and my spirit sank to the dumps. But folks, we came all this far, and I'm not ready to give up just yet. So we repeat our whole process again, if only to land that one last shot, and prove that it's entirely possible to beat Minecraft using just a mouse. And with that, folks, set a hotkey on this one in the top right to see us take on Minecraft if every block looked the same, or mind this one down in the bottom right for another video. If you want to support the channel and get new uploads every week, then craft up a subscription. But until then, take care, and you have a good one, alright?